we have a story, and actually they're two separate stories, but it kind of all relates to the same thing. Mark and I have two children, Emily that's 17 and Jackson that's 9. As you know, we just came through a pandemic that was pretty rough, and there were days that we couldn't go to church, and that had not been something we'd ever been through before. But we came up here one night when everybody was closed out of the church, and the church parking lot was very dark. And Jackson started making comments to me that Satan was, he could feel him saying things to him. And I just said, you just have to tune that out and listen to what God has to say to you. But fast forward later that night, Mark was at work at the time, and we got home and Jackson kept saying, "Mom, it's louder and louder in my head. He's just telling me things to do. He's telling me things to say." And I said, "Who, Jackson?" He said, "Satan." By the time Mark got home, he was just adamant that he looked at Mark and he said, "Satan's telling me right now to tell you to shut up." And he would never say such to Mark. And it got worse and worse, and Mark and I knew we have to do something. And so we started praying over Jackson. Mark started praying at first, "Lord, take our family back," and just praying. And we felt Jackson trembling. We felt his hands trembling while we prayed. And when Mark got finished, I started praying forcefully, "In the name of Jesus, Satan, get out of our house. Get out of our house." And I'm telling you, the louder we spoke the name of Jesus, Jackson trembled until he was in the floor trembling. I've never seen anything like it. We didn't tell anybody about it for a long time because it seems like something out of a movie. Later on, he did follow up in a conversation with Brother Jim about spiritual battles. And Brother Jim talked to him about the armor of God and how to combat that. But I'm just here to tell you, y'all, Satan's real, and he's out there ready to devour. But I'm telling you that the name of the Lord is more powerful, and that we spoke that name of Jesus over our son, and he had to leave.
So in our story, it's a different side of the story. We have two children, Olivia, who is 12, Luke, who is 9. When Luke was an infant, we kind of noticed him not really looking at us. He would look around, he never really made eye contact, and we weren't sure if that was normal or not. I didn't really remember that happening with Olivia. So we went to his 4-month checkup. They were concerned. They said, yes, the face is usually the first thing a baby will focus on. So they actually sent us the next morning to Children's in Birmingham to see the pediatric ophthalmologist. We went there. They saw him. They told us he has albinism. He has no pigment behind his retina. Light just floods him. He doesn't see well. At that point, we don't know. He might can see fairly well later on. He might be legally blind. We just don't know. We just have to wait it out and see. Olivia was not there with us at that appointment. She knew nothing about it. We left that appointment. It was in the morning, and because of kind of unplanned appointment, I did end up going back to work. Paul dropped me back off at work that day, and then he was off. He went and got Olivia, and then they were going to pick me up after work.
So when the doctor said albinism, I didn't know what he was talking about. I was like, I don't know what that is. He said, "Have you heard the term albino?" I said, "Yes." He explained to us that affects his vision. So he could be on one end of the spectrum or another. He could live a normal life and just have a couple of problems, with seeing things. His eyes would shake a little, or he could be almost legally blind. So immediately my mind went to the worst, and it really ate me up with worry and just being anxious, and it scared me to death because I didn't know what kind of life my son was going to lead. So when we picked up Meredith that afternoon from work, we were on the way. And Olivia, she had just turned 3 a few days before. So she was a fresh 3-year-old. And Olivia just out of nowhere said, "Trust, Daddy." I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "You have to trust." I said, "Who do I have to trust? I don't understand." And she says, "You trust God." Okay. "Well, who told you this?" And she said, "The man." I said, "What man? What man told you?" She said, "The man sitting right here next to me told me to let you know to trust God." I was like, "Oh, wow, okay. Yeah, I hear you loud and clear, big guy. Gotcha." So miracles still happen. You can still hear God talk. And Luke's 9, and his vision is not as bad as we had thought it was going to be. His vision is okay. He still has some issues, but he's a normal, wild and crazy 9-year-old boy that gets into stuff, plays video games, does karate, is a master at the bow staff, and our worries are just wiped out from a few little words from Olivia given to her by God.
All 4 of our children are gifts from God, and we've always known that. I think these stories have given us a little glimpse into a God that is super huge and that loves them even when they're children. and that He's got big plans for their life. One thing that Brother Jim told us after Jackson's situation, when we wanted to know why Satan would bother to come to him, he said, think about him. He said from the time he was 5, he was an official greeter at church. He's always wanted to serve people. He serves on Sundays on the carts and doing the cones. And so he said, sometimes Satan comes to those because he's trying to deter their path. Satan wouldn't mess with him if he didn't know that God had big plans for him. And when you look at Olivia's situation, why God would choose to reveal Himself through an angel or through His Spirit to a 3-year-old to reach adults is that childlike faith. And we're just so thankful that we've been able to have a front row seat to that, to know that God is there. There's always a spiritual battle going on between the Lord. He's fighting Satan for us, but we hope our stories have encouraged you.